Let us wipe out factionalism and strengthen the unity and cohesion of the revolutionary ranks. Treaties published in pamphlet form. May 10, 1933. In order to successfully achieve the historic cause of national liberation, the Korean communists should get rid of factionalism and firmly guarantee the unity and cohesion of the revolutionary ranks. Factionalists have done tremendous harm to the communist movement and the anti-Japanese national liberation struggle in our country. Our people are now waging a bloody struggle with arms in hand against the Japanese imperialist aggressors, a band of robbers. Even at this moment, while insidiously seeking personal fame and political ambition, the factionalists are undermining the unity and cohesion of the revolutionary ranks and obstructing the advance of the revolution in every way. Today we are confronted with the urgent task of purging the factionalists from the revolutionary ranks and completely eliminating factionalism. All revolutionary comrades should come out actively in the struggle against factionalism, bearing in mind that the liquidation of factionalism is a prerequisite for the consolidation of the unity and cohesion of the revolutionary ranks and successful development of the anti-Japanese national liberation struggle. 1. Let us have a correct understanding of the factionalist crimes. When we recall the communist movement and anti-Japanese national liberation struggle, waged over 10 odd years in our country, we curse the crimes committed by the factionalists. All the bitter failures and sacrifices in the communist movement and anti-Japanese national liberation struggle in the past were, without exception, related to their criminal deeds. Factionalism is a product of bourgeois and petty bourgeois ideologies, particularly of self-glorification, fame-seeking, and careerism. It has nothing in common with the revolutionary ideas of the working class. Factionalism raised its head in the communist movement of our country because this movement was not guided in its early stage by genuine communists with a steady class stand and deeply imbued with Marxism-Leninism. And the upper strata of its ranks consisted of self-styled Marxists and petty bourgeois intellectuals. As Marxism-Leninism was spreading and the labor movement was surging forward rapidly, the self-styled Marxists and petty bourgeois intellectuals who joined the communist movement in pace with the trend of the times talked about the revolution, but in fact, they were engrossed in their plots to achieve fame and their political ambitions. From the very first days they wormed their way into the revolutionary ranks, they tried, by hook or by crook, to form factions and snatch the leadership, each posing as a leader of the communist movement, seizing the opportunity of the lack of a communist nucleus with an unswerving class stand. Thus, factions of every shade and hue, among them the Tuesday Group, Seoul Group, ML Group, and Seoul Shanghai Group came into being in our communist movement, and sordid factional strife took place. Factions denounced one another, and made desperate efforts to expand their own influence, each insisting that it was the orthodox group. They employed every despicable means, such as abuse, slander, and terrorism, to remove other groups and secure the predominance of their own groups, and did not stop at drawing even snobs and hooligans into their maneuvers. One of the gravest crimes committed by factionalists in the Korean Communist movement was that they split and wrecked the Korean Communist Party. Under the impact of the October Socialist Revolution in Russia, Marxism-Leninism spread rapidly, and the labor movement grew in strength in our country. During this process, the KCP was founded in 1925. Its foundation marked an important landmark in propelling our communist movement and anti-Japanese national liberation struggle. Ever since its birth, however, the party was not able to perform its mission because of the activities of factionalists in the leadership. Only when a party, the vanguard organization of the working class, is united organizationally and ideologically can it rally the masses of the people around it, and organize and mobilize them properly for the revolutionary struggle. But, because of the foul strife among the factionalists, the KCP could not guarantee the purity and organizational and ideological unity of its ranks, or lay a firm mass foundation. As a result, it could not correctly organize and lead our people's anti-Japanese national liberation struggle. Inevitably, it ceased to exist as an organized force 3 years after its formation, unable to withstand the brutal repression of the Japanese imperialists. The factionalists not only disorganized and destroyed the KCP, but also committed such crimes as dividing and wrecking mass organizations in the initial stage of their formation in our country. Engrossed in expanding the influence of their groups and in seizing hegemony, they wormed their way into the leadership of mass organizations and triggered off detestable factional strife to place them under the influence of their own groups. Although in the past a great number of workers, peasants, young people's, and women's organizations were formed in our country, they failed to accomplish their missions mainly because of the factionalist divisive activities. Even after the dissolution of the KCP, the factionalists continued their despicable factionalist feuds in Manchuria under the cloak of party reconstruction, thus creating great difficulties in the work of rebuilding the party. The dissolution of the KCP taught all communists a serious lesson. Nonetheless, the factionalists continued to indulge in feuds, crying for immediate reconstruction of the party without any organizational and ideological preparation. Completely obsessed with worship of great powers, they in turn formed a preparatory committee for party reconstruction, a working committee and the like, and maneuvered to establish a party around their own groups, vying for the approval of the Comintern. Consequently, the communist movement was further divided, and the party reconstruction movement ran up against grave difficulties. Another factionalist crime was that they caused enormous sacrifices and racial dissension by organizing a foolhardy mass struggle. No sooner had the movement for immediate party reconstruction failed than the factionalists in Manchuria staged a left adventurous May 30 uprising on the plea of reconstructing the party through struggle. The result was that many revolutionary people lost their lives, revolutionary organizations were destroyed, and national antagonism was created between the Korean and Chinese peoples. Even now, the factionalists persist in their factionalist activities and greatly hinder the development of the anti-Japanese national liberation struggle through right and left opportunistic maneuvers. They utter the false cry, because the factionalist sycophants no longer exist, the question of opposition to factional strife should not even be brought up for debate, and if this subject were broached, again, it would be equivalent to causing factional strife. The purpose behind this is to stamp out the struggle against factionalism and carry on factional activities under cover. They are opposed to the struggle of the Korean communists for the liberation of the Korean nation. Posing as ardent proletarian internationalists, they assert that to talk about the Korean nation's liberation at the present stage is a step contrary to the line of the Comintern. If, as they claim, it is a mistake for the Korean communists to fight for the liberation and independence of the Korean nation, for whom should we, the sons and daughters of the Korean people, shed our blood? This claim of the factionalists is nonsense that can only be uttered by those who shut their eyes to the misfortunes and tribulations of our compatriots, groaning under the barbarous colonial rule of Japanese imperialism. The factionalists in particular objected to the line of armed struggle, the most active line of struggle against Japanese imperialism. They babbled that taking up arms against the Japanese imperialist aggressors was premature and an act of rashness standing no chance of success. This revealed the factionalists as cowards panic-stricken in the face of the Japanese imperialist might and as right capitulationist preaching to the people not to fight against the Japanese imperialist aggressors, but to submit to them. Even when their claims have been utterly refuted, they continue their underhand scheming to hamper the political and military activities of the anti-Japanese People's Guerrilla Army. The factionalists fear and oppose building up the core ranks of the Korean Revolution with youths of worker and peasant origin. Obstinately, they scheme to place petty bourgeois intellectuals and ostensible Marxists in the leading positions of our communist movement. Moreover, they obstruct in every way the work of uniting all sections of the anti-Japanese forces and mobilizing them in the sacred war against Japanese imperialism. They ostracize patriotic non-comprador capitalists, religious communities, and intellectuals who should be drawn into the anti-Japanese National United Front, branding them as a reactionary class, two-faced persons and waverers. The factionalists committed serious crimes in the struggle to build guerrilla bases too. In some guerrilla zones, they advocated that a Soviet government be established, which does not correspond with the character and basic tasks of the Korean Revolution at the present stage, and that socialism be built all at once. They also rashly abolished private ownership of every kind and organized collective life, collective production, and collective distribution. This gave rise to considerable unrest and confusion among the people in the guerrilla zones, and caused many people in the enemy-controlled areas to get a wrong impression of the communists. While insisting on the establishment of guerrilla zones, guerrilla bases in the form of liberated areas, the factionalists hindered the conversion of vast farming areas around guerrilla zones into semi-guerrilla zones. On purpose, these elements pit the people of the two districts against each other, defining the guerrilla zones as Soviet areas or red areas, and the enemy-controlled areas as white areas. They give the inhabitants of the enemy-held areas a wide berth, and are hostile to them, stigmatizing them as unreliable, lackeys of the Japanese imperialists, or as two-faced. Furthermore, alleging that revolutionary organizations in the enemy-ruled areas are unreliable, they want to give up working with these underground organizations. In this way, they are maneuvering to have the guerrilla zones isolated, cut off from the outside. Unless these criminal acts of the left opportunists and factionalists are exposed and dealt with promptly, the entire anti-Japanese national liberation struggle, to say nothing of the guerrilla bases, will be beset with serious difficulties. Fawning upon and tailing behind the left opportunists, the factionalists are now resorting to vicious, harmful measures designed to disrupt the revolutionary ranks under the plausible excuse of fighting against the Minsangden to the end. In a bid to disintegrate the revolutionary ranks, they persecute large numbers of communists and revolutionary people faithful to the revolution, and go so far as to torture and murder them arbitrarily, labeling them members of the Minsengdan. Thus, they are creating great uneasiness and disorder within the revolutionary ranks. In this way, the factionalists have committed, and are still committing, such unpardonable crimes as obstructing the unity and cohesion of the revolutionary ranks and the strengthening and development of the revolutionary struggle. 2. Let us see through the factionalist methods. The factionalists hide their true colors by various cunning methods. In order to make a clean sweep of factionalism, therefore, we must clearly understand the factionalist methods. They conceal their cloven hooves by deceptive and hypocritical words and deeds, and disguise themselves as ardent revolutionaries or steadfast communists. By doing so, they hope to win favor and popularity among the masses and to attain their factional aims. To begin with, these elements are addicted to ultra-leftist speeches and stances. They learn by heart certain propositions of Marx or Lenin and, posing as Marxist-Leninist luminaries, shout ultra-leftist slogans. Worker-peasant Soviets should be set up, and socialism be built right away, and dictatorship of the proletariat must be established, without taking into consideration the given stage of revolutionary development and the maturity of the revolutionary situation. And they incite the masses to reckless riots, as at the time of the May 30 uprising, and bring the political charge of waverers or cowards against those who oppose ultra-leftist actions. The factionalists resort to all sorts of unsavory deeds to conceal their stained past lives, behaving as if they'd done something great for the revolution. As the ringleaders in factional strife, some of them did grave harm to the unity and cohesion of the party. Nonetheless, they claim that they have greatly contributed to the revolution, even fabricating their own names and backgrounds. Another method the factionalists employ to whip up strife is to win people over to their side without principle, by every kind of fraud, conciliation, and trickery. They get in touch with discontented elements and encourage them, saying that their complaints and discontent are reasonable or natural, regardless of the source of their dissatisfaction. On the other hand, they cajole them as if to satisfy their demands. Moreover, when they come across elements likely to complain or express discontent, they pretend to sympathize with them and support them so as to draw them into their fold. The more isolated they become from the revolutionary organizations, the more they resort to this method. The shop-worn method of the factionalists is to play a double game. Outwardly they support and approve the decision of the organization, but weave a sinister plot to overrule it. Behind the scenes, they appear to be loyal to the organization, but in actual fact undermine its discipline. What is more, they are always two-faced in relations with officials who stick to revolutionary principles. The factionalists are full of praise and respect for principled activists when they are present, but make a habit of slandering and disparaging them behind their backs. Ostensibly, they pretend to be fighting for the revolution, but in fact they distort the revolutionary line or hamper its implementation. They do not even convey the decisions and documents of the organizations to those at lower levels. This causes serious confusion in pressing forward with the revolutionary line and obstructs the organizational and ideological unity of the revolutionary organizations. Their double dealing also finds expression in hindering the solidarity of the Korean and Chinese peoples in their struggle against the common enemy, the Japanese imperialists. In the revolutionary organizations, they shout about proletarian internationalism and friendship and solidarity between the Korean and Chinese peoples. However, once they go among the masses, they heap insults on Chinese friends and anti-Japanese fighters and look down on them. Looking down upon and suppressing the masses, the factionalists try to force them to do their will. They take advantage of their positions of authority to impose exorbitant demands and claims upon the masses in commanding tones. If the masses refuse to obey their orders, they threaten and browbeat them by ranting about violation of revolutionary discipline, reactionaries, and such like. What they fear more than anything else is the criticism and constructive opinions of the masses, which they try to avert by threats and blackmail. The end of the factionalists, who persist in their crafty feuds, proves that they have no alternative but to degenerate into cat's paws of the enemy. When the leader of one faction was expelled from the revolutionary ranks after his true face had been revealed, he perpetrated dreadful atrocities. In league with the police of the Japanese imperialist consulate, he had numerous communists imprisoned, tortured, and murdered. And some factionalists, upon their arrest by the Japanese police, volunteered to write declarations of conversion and offered them information on revolutionary organizations. All these facts show that the factionalists are human scum devoid of elementary common sense and revolution. 3. Let us further strengthen the struggle to eliminate factionalism. We should fight more actively to oust factionalists from the revolutionary ranks and to clear away factionalism. What then should we do to make the struggle against factionalism successful? First, all the guerrillas and the members of the Young Communist League and other revolutionary organizations should develop a revolutionary world outlook. Those who do not have a firm revolutionary world outlook cannot combat factionalism properly and prevent its infiltration. Factionalist ideas always penetrate the minds of those who are not possessed of a firm revolutionary world outlook. But no counter-revolutionary ideology can seep into the minds of those who have a correct understanding of the objectives and justness of the revolutionary struggle and an attitude faithful to the revolutionary cause to the end. Therefore, we must conduct with greater energy the work of arming the guerrillas, YCL members, and revolutionary masses with Marxism-Leninism and the correct line for the Korean Revolution. Thus, all guerrillas and members of the YCL and other revolutionary organizations will be fully prepared to judge all matters correctly from the revolutionary viewpoint at all times, and fight for the interests of the revolution without vacillation in any adversity. Second, it is necessary to actively mobilize all guerrillas, YCL members, and the broad revolutionary masses in the struggle against factionalism. The revolutionary masses possess the greatest strength to smash factionalism. Nobody can throw dust in the eyes of the revolutionary masses. No matter how slyly they may try, the factionalists will not hold out if all the guerrillas, YCL members, and revolutionary masses keep a sharp lookout for their factional activities and rise as one in the struggle to eliminate factionalism. Therefore, in order to ensure success in the struggle to wipe out factionalism, all guerrillas and members of the YCL and other revolutionary organizations must be fully acquainted with the harmfulness of factionalism, the methods of the factionalists, and the significance of the anti-factionalist struggle, so that they will take an active part in this struggle. On the plea of combating the Minsengdan, the factionalists are now viciously committing factional acts. Under these circumstances, their cunning methods and crimes should be clearly made known in combination with the anti-Minsengdan struggle. Thus, it will be made certain that while correctly struggling against the Minsengdan, the broad revolutionary masses can ferret out in no time the insidious acts of the factionalists committed in the name of the anti-Minsengdan struggle and put up an uncompromising struggle against them. Third, the struggle against factionalism should be organized and unfolded in close combination with the strengthening of the revolutionary ranks. The main reason why factionalism was not done away with in our communist movement and factional acts continued in the past is that the communist ranks had not been properly built up. If we learn a lesson from this bitter fact and consolidate the revolutionary ranks still further in terms of class consciousness and reinforce their backbone, we will be able to conduct the struggle for the liquidation of factionalism more successfully. Therefore, we should definitely enlist fine people of worker and peasant origin, particularly fresh young folk immune from factionalist thinking, in the AJPGA and the YCL, so as to constantly improve the composition of the revolutionary ranks and strengthen the backbone forces of the revolution. Simultaneously, we should take a thorough look at the antecedents and social origins of people and correctly assess and examine their day-to-day activities. On this basis, we can select cadres for the Revolutionary Army. We should not be deceived by those who make a show of enthusiasm or admit their faults in words only, but should entrust the task of leadership to excellent people of working-class origin and poor and hired peasant origin who sincerely participate in the revolution and boldly select them as cadres for the Revolutionary Army through persistent education and training. We should temper and foster large numbers of cadres of worker origin and of poor and hired peasant origin and make sure that they are successful in combating factionalism. Fourth, it is essential to guard against the rightist and leftist deviations in the fight against factionalism and conduct this fight in a principled manner in the interest of the revolution. Incidentally, leftist errors should not be committed. It will not do to regard those engaged in the past socialist enlightenment movement or communist movement in the same light, on the grounds that factionalism has to be opposed. Among those who were implicated in the previous communist movement are quite a few people who failed to see through the factionalist activities of the ringleaders of factions in good time, and, under their influence, got involved temporarily in factional strife in spite of themselves. If we lump them together with the factionalists, we will lose many people with whom we could unite. We should also draw into our ranks and educate the people who truly repent of their crimes, and are determined to do their stint for the revolution to the end, even though they have been involved with factions. And we should not discard officials on the charge of their being factionalists by putting momentary errors committed in their work on a par with the counter-revolutionary acts perpetrated by factionalists. It is also necessary to take every precaution against rightist errors in combating factionalism, The practice of neglecting the struggle against factionalism manifests itself in some revolutionary organizations and YCL organizations. Failing to see through the sly methods of the factionalists, they believe the assertion the factionalists have already been purged, or they think as though the anti-factionalist struggle weakens the unity of the revolutionary ranks. This is an intolerable